again, you have that multiplicity of beings in different timelines. When I first came in and I became aware that I was in time-space, there was certain things that I wasn't sure about. One of them was whereabouts in the shift I was. Was it before, during, or after the shift? I didn't know. And the other one was, which timeline am I in? How severe is it? You know, what's going on in this timeline? I didn't know either. And I found out when I was 3, and I wanted out. I totally had what you might call a toddler nervous breakdown. When I found out there were still wars on the planet, I realized, it just dawned on me which timeline I was in. And it's one of the worst, you know, they still have wars here. And I completely broke down, and I started crying, and I cried for 3 or 4 days. They had to take me to the doctor, give me an injection, put me to sleep for another few days or whatever. And then I woke up and it was like, I don't know if I can do this. It was honestly that thought at that time. I honestly didn't think I would be able to do it.
At the age of 3?
Yeah.
And you remember this totally clearly now, looking back?
Oh, I've never forgotten it. It used to be a point of humor in my family, you know. How many 3-year-olds do have a nervous breakdown when they find there's war still going on in the planet? It wasn't something that was easily forgotten.
Do you remember every detail of your infancy?
Not anymore, not anymore. I used to have complete recall about everything that happened, and every book I read, if I had read a book 10 years ago, you could hold the book in your hands, open any page, give me the page number, and I would recite it. I had that type of memory, but I dropped that at some point. I have no idea why. Maybe it was just getting overcrowded up there, you know. So I can actually look back, if I'm given a time and date, I can look back and probably find it, but now it's lack of interest, perhaps, I don't know, but I don't have full recall of everything that happened anymore.
And your overall task, your overall life mission here, to what degree is it successful, or being successful, or on the way to being successful? How can you measure how well you're doing, or how well we're all doing with your support?
I suppose there are times when I could help somebody and they don't make the agreement, they don't reach out back. And I do get a moment of, I wish they had. It would make things a lot easier for the planet if they had, you know. I can't name people because that would put them in a situation where that free will is then violated, because they chose not to engage at some level.
Is it possible that that's a question of timing, and you might come back to them and see whether they might engage later?
I actually do.
Right.
I do try every year, or depending, when I'm told try again, I will actually present myself there to see if they're ready or whatever, and, you know.
So you've got a kind of small number of pending missions that you haven't been able to progress.
Exactly,
sort of.
yes. However, on the ones that I have been able to make full contact, each one has been very successful.
And overall, in terms of the total context for all of this, which is
the planet,
changing the timeline and
yes.
Restoring free will and self-determinism to the citizens of the planet, how far on track are we? Can you measure this? Are we doing well?
We're doing extremely well, way beyond any expectations, and also it's wide open right now. It's wide open. There are no limits of how much it can be accomplished.
So it's wide open in terms of the degree of positive potential.
Right.
There is, that's what
yes.
you mean. Not in terms of whether we're going to make it or whether we're not.
Oh no, we are going to make it.
Okay. Right.
And how rough that's going to be and how hard it's going to be for the majority of people on the planet is still open. It's not going to be as bad as it could have been, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how bad it gets, it really depends on the collective. It really depends on each individual choosing to process their fear. And each person that does it, each person that decides not to engage in that fear, adds a little bit more higher vibration to the planet and affects it for hundreds of others.
Right. So you're saying that we're definitely going to make it.
Yes.
As it were, but the unknown variable is exactly how rough a ride it's going to be.
Yes, and that's going to be decided by the collective.
Right.
It's what the collective needs. It's going to be what happens.
Does that mean that we have changed the timeline, or is that too simplistic? Because it's like a question of which timeline we're on.
Right.
It depends on
the individual.
Let me start that sentence again. Is a question of we could be on any number of different timelines, and some of them are rougher than others, but they're all kind of going to end up in the right place.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so each individual on the planet has control over their own timeline. And that's one of the things that they don't want you to know. Because if the person is able to change their timeline, they're not going to choose one where they're enslaved for the rest of their life. They're going to choose one where they can manifest wherever they like, and live wherever they like, and have a beautiful life.
Right.
So when we're talking about have we changed the timeline, the correct question would be, have I changed my timeline? And joining those others that want the same timeline that I want.
Now I've got the visual metaphor of in inverted commas the timeline as actually being this big braided rope made out of millions of little threads. Mm-hmm. which are intertwined,
right,
in any number of different permutations to make a timeline.
Yes.
And each one of us create that thread as we wish, and align ourselves with others who are creating their threads as they wish.
Exactly. And if you have a conscious choosing of that thread and threading and joining, you no longer have enslavement. It's impossible. You no longer have wars unless there's a group of people who really into war games, and they can create their own timeline together.
Wow. That's a moderately staggering thought, I have to say. In a previous conversation we had just the other day, you kind of put a percentage on it. You said that it was 70% handled. And that might not even have been exactly what you said. What were you referring to there?
A smooth transition without chaos and like millions of lives being lost.
Ah, okay, I've got you. All right. So that's 70% is on the kind of smooth, rough spectrum.
Right.
Okay. But actually you're saying the overall outcome is assured.
Absolutely, yeah.
Am I right in understanding that when you came here a few decades ago, the outcome was not assured, and since then conditions have changed, and now it is assured?
Yes.
Okay. And in putting it together like that, I'm not trying to simplify things in such a crude way as to saying that you alone have done this. You said earlier you wanted to point out that of course you haven't. This is a whole movement, it's a whole concert, it's a whole team-working effort with tens of thousands of people involved, and we'll never know most of them.
I would say millions.
Yes, all in different ways.
Right.
There are beings who are incarnating here from everywhere and
in the
everywhere.
universe.
Exactly. Yeah, from the universe, from outside of the universe,
right,
and from the next door planet. I mean, all kinds of things are happening here. And many of the people watching this may have had personal encounters with some of those beings. They may well be those beings themselves.
Right.
They may be those beings themselves and they don't even realize it, and this video is going to wake them up. Maybe. Yes. How about that?
Yeah.
Because here we have the interesting opportunity of, rather than you sitting next to someone on a park bench or going to visit some evil dark despot on his throne in his mansion personally, you can actually do this virtually through this video by representing your presence
Right.
with everyone who watches this, tens of thousands of people, and maybe this
Yes.
is why we're doing it.
There's no coincidence that you're watching this video right now.